Welcome to the Growth Plus Exit podcast, where owners of privately held middle market companies talk about founding, scaling, and exiting their businesses successfully. Learn how to maximize and monetize your business on your own terms. Let's get started.
Good afternoon, I'm Susan Kearney, and I'm your host for the Growth Plus Exit podcast, where we feature middle market owners and experts talking about founding, scaling, and exiting their businesses on their own terms. The episode today is brought to you by Newport, a team of seasoned C-suite executives who help CEOs of privately held companies grow, de-risk, and build more value in their businesses in advance of a successful sale. To work with us, visit us at newportllc.com. Today, I have Chad here from Rise 25. Chad has done thousands of interviews with successful entrepreneurs and CEOs. And today we're going to flip the script, and Chad will be interviewing me instead of me interviewing a guest. So Chad, it's great to see you again. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, great to see you as well, Susan. Thanks so much for having me. Looking forward to talking with you. Hey, as we get started here, I know that you have been involved in founding and scaling and ultimately selling several successful businesses. Can you tell me more about that experience for you?
Yeah, I sure can, because it's what led me to do the work I do today, which I am very passionate about and which I love, which is working with private company owners. So in my career, I spent most of it in the software business, business systems, data and analytics, big data, that kind of thing. And worked in 7 or 8 startups. Of course, as it goes in the tech business, a number of those were grand failures, and I learned a ton from them about how to do it correctly, which I apply with my clients. But equally, there were 3 of them where we built and were able to sell to, large software corporations like Oracle, for example. And the common thread among those things is a lot more than finding a great idea, although that's important. It was really pulling together a team of folks who love to work together, who were really behind the mission, kind of a family situation, and then being able to bring a product to market, listen to our customers, get them on board and excited, and grow quite rapidly. That's what made companies like Oracle and Siebel Corporation interested to acquire us. So it's been a lot of fun.
So at what point did you realize that the team was a huge part of the success or the potential failure of a company?
Yeah, I started to realize that early in my career. I was lucky enough to work with a team of 4 or 5 folks for several years at one company. And when that company went kind of belly up, the group of us kind of marketed ourselves as a team to go to another startup company. And we got there and we realized that we worked together so well and knew each other so well that it was super efficient and productive. It's kind of like in a marriage where you have a kind of a common language that nobody else understands. We had that kind of relationship, and so we could hit the ground running. And that team actually worked together at 4 locations, 4 different companies, building those companies and selling a couple of them, and then a couple of them not, being that successful. But that's what investors look for. And that's what makes it fun to build businesses, is a team that works.
So I know, like in sports, like you put 5 guys who are not the most talented guys out there, but they know each other, they play well together, and they're often better than maybe 5 all-stars.
Yeah.
In business, how does that chemistry kind of work?
Well, it's, people have different styles. People work best in different cultures and with different kinds of leadership. I always say there are A types and Z types. A types have a bias for action, a tolerance for ambiguity. They're flexible. They're running and gunning and figuring out on the fly. Z types, a little more ordered, a little more planful. And so kind of getting the styles right, getting the culture right. And then the last thing is just having that trust, that foundation of transparency, communication, and trust, so that you don't have to stop and waste time figuring out politics or any of that junk. You just know everyone's got everyone's back, and you just can go.
You mentioned that you have been in a few failures. Sometimes those experiences can be just as valuable, if not more valuable, than the success stories. Was there ever a point where, looking back on your success stories and looking back on the failures, Was there ever like a fork in the road where you realize now like, oh, we went this way and ended up failing when we should have gone this way and ended up succeeding?
Yeah, absolutely. And one example of that, a fork in the road, is, when you're doing a technology startup, you'll get going probably on your own dime, right? Or your family's dime or friends or whoever, angels. And then eventually to scale, you need money from the capital markets, from venture or private equity investors. And that's one of those junctures in the road where you have to be seeking those funds at the right time. And most importantly, you have to get them from the right people. I talked about how a leadership team gets cohesive around a culture, around a set of norms and behaviors and trust. And it's equally true when you're a leadership team and you're looking for an investor to pick the right company with the right culture, the right investing thesis, the right knowledge, the right Rolodex, the right everything. Because they become a part of your team, of course. And I'm sorry to say that many of us learn that lesson the hard way when we take capital from people that don't check all those boxes. But once you've had that experience, the next time you're a lot more careful with the mutual due diligence. I can say that.
Sure. So based on all of the experience that we've talked about so far, how have you kind of been able to take that and then apply that to helping your clients with the work you're doing at Newport?
Yeah, well, it has a lot to do with having seen things before, and understanding how you got into a place, positive or not, how you got out of a place, positive or not. And so bringing a combination of that experience, been in the chair, been in the seat, made the decisions, had the mistakes, with the ability that I have to think strategically and creatively and innovatively, is a great package for our private company owners because they know their businesses. They're smart people. They're driven people. They're hard workers. They put their heart into it. They just haven't built the business beyond the point where it is today. And so the combination of experience and innovation is really helpful to them to both create strategy, build teams, and then to actually execute in the business every day.
By the time a business owner comes to you, are they receptive to your ideas? I mean, obviously they're driven and they've gotten to the point where they are. Are they open to maybe your ideas that they haven't thought of, or maybe that they don't understand totally?
Well, yeah, some are, some aren't, right? Of course. But that's one of the qualifying characteristics for us, or certainly for me, is not just that the business be ready to scale, but that the owner be ready to scale. They have ideas. My clients, Newport clients, are growth minded. They see a bright future. They want to get there, but they must be coachable. They must kind of understand that they need help. They want help. Obviously, we don't tell them what to do. They're the owners of their business and they make the decisions, but they need to be open to different ideas and different approaches to consider, as the path goes out before them. If not, it's no fun for me and it's not impactful and it's no fun from them, not valuable. So it's just kind of a frustrating waste of time.
So what would you say maybe are a few common mistakes that you see private company owners make when they're trying to grow their business?
Yeah, so there are a few that you see over and over. There are some that are related to people. For example, frequently they'll hire in the marketplace folks who can help them in the business right now, but can't grow with them. And so they're constantly kind of churning through people as the business gets advances, because each stage of evolution, the business needs something a little different. That's one of the things. One is a cultural thing, which is frequently people start companies, private companies, because they've had experience in the corporate world that they don't want to be a part of anymore, and they don't want to replicate. So they're building cultures that are really people focused and people forward, which is terrific. But they can go too far and sometimes build a culture of entitlement among their employees instead of a kind of a balanced culture of performance and give and take. And that can really cause problems in the business. It slows it down. You don't have the productivity that you want to have in it, and it's tough. So those are just a couple of examples of kind of the things that I see that over and over people do. And it's usually because they're trying to do the right thing, right? They just don't know how they haven't done it before.
So how can you, the first one you talked about where you're hiring somebody who is great right now, but then, okay, we're not going to need them in a short period of time, and then we have to churn. How can you kind of avoid maybe hiring just somebody for the short term?
Yeah, so there's a couple things we do. The first thing we do is we get business owners to start thinking in the longer term, thinking more strategically than operationally. Quite frequently when we get there, they're thinking about this year and then next year, the next year. We frame a 3-year kind of planning cycle for them and start to think in terms of where that endpoint is. Once you see that endpoint, then when it comes to recruiting people to join your team, it's easier for you to envision an organization structure and design and a specific role that starts today with these job responsibilities, but grows toward that endpoint that you have visibility to. So kind of having your sight line on the horizon is super helpful. And we step them through that process.
And then the second one, building a culture. How can you avoid kind of that culture of entitlement?
That's a tough one because sometimes it's built in very deep. But I think it has to do with being sure that accountability is a part of the culture. And that's a hard thing for a lot of people. People understand how to delegate tasks or jobs, but sometimes not hold people accountable for actually doing the work. And when you have a combination of maybe not a lot of accountability with the goodwill and the good nature of the owner to provide good roles, to provide longevity of employment, to provide good benefits, to, have people work reasonable hours and not get burned out and so on, sometimes you start to get taken advantage of. So adding that accountability and talking frankly and openly with your employees about the kind of culture you're building, a culture of innovation, a culture of collaboration, and so on, you generally would do the trick.
Is building a culture, it sounds like sometimes those things just happen on accident. You're like, oh, I didn't realize my culture was going to be this. But how much thought goes into building a culture? If you want a culture of accountability, you want a place to be collaborative, or do we divide and conquer? All that stuff. Is that something that a leader or a founder needs to take stock of right away?
Yes and no. Yes and no. So the thing about founding a business is the business that you start today is going to be really different from the business a year, 2 years, 5, 7 years out. But you do, as a founder, need to understand what the place you're working in, what the place you want other people to work in should be like. So most founders will start off with some ideas, but they don't get, and really don't need to get like all corporate America about it, right? With lots of rules and, regulations and bureaucracy around it. But rather, it kind of starts as a mantra really in themselves about what's working, what it should be like to work here. And then as you build the team, it's you and it's 2 of you and it's 5 of you and 7 and 10 and 25 and 50 and 100. You refine those things. And the secret is to just repeat them early and often. Just keep saying
what
them.
Refinements do you find that people usually make? Maybe just based on inexperience in building cultures.
Yeah. So most people want a culture of honesty and integrity, trust. Many people want a culture that's customer centric. These are all great things. But as you fine tune, you frequently need to add things to your value system, right? That's the articulation of your culture, is what you value. Things like having a bias for action to keep things moving along, or a tolerance for ambiguity. We don't need to know all things in order to make progress, or collaboration. So you may start off with a few things, and those stay as foundations, right? We want to be kind to each other. We want to, work hard, and so on and so forth. But as you see what the business requires, you add things. I frequently, with my clients, we're looking at things like tolerance for ambiguity, because as the business gets more complicated, it's harder to get your hands around. You need to be flexible around, what you're doing today might be different. And things like speed, moving and speed, and, kind of keeping things going. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So what about things like, I don't know, maybe this was in the 90s or something, but like, oh, there's going to be a ping pong table in the break room, things like that. Like, is that a big part of culture, or is that kind of outdated?
Well, I think it's been outdated, but maybe it's coming back, right? Because guess what? COVID, particularly among my clients, professional services companies, technology companies primarily are what I serve. folks were a little bit remote before COVID, completely remote during COVID. And we're just now trying to figure out how, whether, when, and how much to get back. So yeah, all of those things. But now as we get back in the office and want to rebuild our culture in some ways, some of those things are coming back. Free lunches every day in the office, Friday afternoon, attitude adjustment days, softball tournaments, all of that kind of stuff, I think is recurring as people realize that working at home is great, but owners want some central hub, some core to the culture. And those things are coming back to, I think, encourage it.
Is it important, even in a remote, you have great access to people when your company is remote. Is it important to establish like this is a fun place to work, for lack of a better word, even while it's remote?
Oh yeah. In fact, it may be more important, right? You have to keep people engaged. It's very easy if you, even if you've been with a business for a long time, if you're working out of your home and every day you've got lots to do, you get heads down, you do this thing, that, the other thing. And you don't have to get up and walk to get a cup of coffee. You don't have to, not going down to the deli with people to get lunch. It's easy to feel like you're on your own. In fact, we have a partner here at Newport of mine that a lot of my clients bring in specifically to talk to them about how do you build a culture of engagement and fun when everyone's remote. And there's an art to that. There really is. But it's important. It's just as important to have fun when you're together as when you're remote. And for me, in all my companies, one of our core values has been fun. So maybe that's why I think that's important.
And is it pretty easy to build a culture of accountability and fun?
Well, first, let me say building a culture isn't that easy, and changing it is even harder. But yeah, of course it is. I mean, accountability isn't a bad thing, right? It's not a four-letter word. It's just a misunderstood word. And accountability, if you do it right, it actually frees managers from worry, care, and responsibility. But it also frees their team because they know exactly what they should be doing. And every week they make a commitment. Here's where I am against my goals. Here's what I'm going to do this week, and the next week, and the next week. And so I do a lot of telling people accountability is not a four-letter word. It actually gives you freedom to be able to run and gun and operate and do what you need to do without constantly stopping and asking and wondering. So I love it. In fact, I've got on my desk a little white paper I'm writing about accountability, delegation, accountability, and decision-making, and how to operate in a growing company so that you can balance those three things.
So let's say a business owner or a founder has been doing their thing. They've been kind of chugging along. They've gotten to a certain point, and then they realize, I need help. And then they talk to you, and then they realize my culture has gone in this direction when it should have gone in this direction. Is it easy to? Well, obviously it's not easy. How feasible is it to kind of rebrand your culture, to
rebuild it?
Yeah, rebuild your culture.
Yeah, I mean, it just takes time, but it's doable with intention and discipline, and I would say goodwill. For example, there was a software company I worked with at one time that had been founded as a nonprofit and had changed its legal formation to be a for-profit, a certified B corporation. But they needed to change the culture. The old culture wasn't a bad culture. It was just a nonprofit culture. So it was moving a little bit more slowly. It wasn't quite as innovative and some of those things. So we needed to change the culture. How did we do it? Well, we did a few things. One, the leadership team got together and talked about what new behaviors we thought needed to be in the business. And at a monthly meeting with our team, we talked about it with them and we got buy-in. What do we need to add to our culture so we can move faster and be more innovative? So that was the first step. The second step was to recognize people who were exhibiting the right behaviors, right? If you want people to move faster, recognize people who are moving faster, and more people will think in that way. Recognize people for innovation. Recognize people for failure, because if you're going to innovate, you're going to fail. So there was a recognition component. The third thing we did was we changed our recruiting strategy. And so everybody we brought into the business was kind of a different model. And what we were trying to do was kind of mix cultures, mix the old with the new, and have the new people bring ideas with them and be kind of a model for our existing employees. And in fact, we built a lot of teams and some task forces and things intentionally comprised of our original team that we adored and the new folks, kind of building brackish water from fresh and salt water, get to new places. So those are just some of the things that we did. It takes time, but if you're genuine about it and if you work hard as an owner, as a leadership team, you can accomplish it because your people will be on board.
Sounds good. Is there anything else we should know about kind of the culture effect of building a business or rebuilding a culture, things like that, as we kind of wrap things up here?
Yeah, the last thing I'd say about it is from an investor's perspective. And that's what I try to bring to my clients. Because many of them, having built a valuable, larger business, they want to exit that business and create some wealth for themselves and their teams, right? Investors think that having a healthy culture is important. It's on the checklist when they're looking at your company. They want to know about you, about your team, how you operate, but they want to know that your folks are engaged, that they're retainable. They want to have a healthy culture where people want to come and work and will stay and do the work and will find it valuable.
How do they often go about figuring out whether that's the case or not before they buy?
Well, I mean, there's obviously conversations you have with them, but to complement that, they observe, right? They'll observe the leadership team in a kind of in a management set of meetings. They'll observe the leadership team and how it works together. They will talk to people in the marketplace about your company and, who goes to work there, how long do they stay, what kind of culture do they have, how do they treat their clients, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of information gathering. I think now, kind of in the last few years, some private equity firms are actually building inventories and assessments for leadership teams and culture, so that they can learn early on in the process before they invest too much, if it's a healthy culture, if it's not. So it's definitely a top priority for investors.
Okay, good to know. Hey, Susan, it's been great to talk to you. Thanks so much for all of your time and your insights. Appreciate you having me today.
Hey, Chad, it was great to see you again. Thanks very much. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you. So long, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Growth Plus Exit podcast, sponsored by Newport, a unique national business advisory firm. If you enjoy this show, be sure to share, like, and subscribe for future episodes.